Coming up on this week's episode of CEO Yourself.
And then like gnawing on my kneecaps, and I'm trying to feed this screaming newborn. Jimmy was doing like incredibly long days in North Sydney, so the opposite side of where we were. Mum wasn't there, and I was by myself with these two kids, and I just remember just thinking like, how did I get here?
Rachelle Rowlings is a fashion enthusiast and stylist. Today on CEO Yourself, we deep dive her CEO superpower, surrender. The most important role in the entire world is motherhood. So it would be amiss of me not to have an episode on motherhood on CEO Yourself.
Number one mum, myself.
So of course, when I thought of who I wanted to speak with about motherhood, it was always you, Rachelle. Aww. Welcome to CEO Yourself.
Oh, I'm honoured.
Thank you for being
here. I am honoured, actually.
Truly. Because what I love about you is you are truly authentically yourself on social media. And you speak so beautifully to your role as a mother.
Thanks, my darling.
You didn't necessarily aspire to become a stay-at-home mum.
No.
How did it happen?
Oh, gosh. Well, you know, it's the fairy tale. You meet, you know, the man of your dreams. Or in my case, I met Jimmy and I was the girl who, no, I was. No, it took some, okay, gosh, it's time to settle down. And, you know, you want that. I always knew I wanted children from, you know, and it's funny because now as a 37-year-old mum of two, I look back and I think, did I want children because that's kind of what society expects of us, or did I really want them? But I think more, you know, often than not, I realised that I did really want children, and especially now that I have these two amazing humans, I'm sure of it. But no, so obviously, you know, I fell pregnant and shortly after our wedding, and I was in media, and it was still very much a male-dominated industry, you know, from a female perspective. You know, I went to a lot of lunches and did a lot of entertaining and kind of making myself sound like a prostitute, but it was absolutely not that. But no, it was, you know, very much like you're on and you're selling and you are representative of that business, you know, how you look, how you behave, the people that you're schmoozing, you know. And then all of a sudden I was, you know, a pregnant woman, and I wasn't a great pregnant woman either, so I spent a lot of time.
You've been very vocal about not loving pregnancy.
I hated pregnancy, hated it. Also because I'm 5'1", and I also became 5'1" outwards as well. So I was like a cube, like walking down the street. I had so much water retention everywhere except my calves. So I literally was like someone had stuck two pegs into like a balloon, and I was just like walking down the street. It's like
one of those like Mr. Chatterbox or whatever, like the one that's the square.
Literally, I was not square, I was round. So I was a blimp with two little like sad little sticks sticking out. And yeah, and look, so I had, you know, I finished up, I had Roman, and it was coming up to
When
me.
you say you finished up though, did you finish up to go on maternity leave?
I did. Yeah. I did. I finished up to go on maternity leave. My maternity leave was 12 months. And, you know, I don't think anyone really like, you go, yeah, I'll take, you know, 6 months, 3 months, 12 months, you know, never would be long enough, you know, because everyone just thinks, okay, well, I'm taking it off to be with this child. But actually you are, it's like you're born again as well. You are a child again, except that you have now a human that you have to keep alive, you know, and just comprehending that and changing your life to that could actually take a whole lifetime, which it does, raising a child, you know, a human. But basically,
and getting to know the new you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And learning.
The rebirth.
It's a rebirth. A woman is rebirthed, and very much more so in a sense of a man, because your body is rebirthed as well. Like regardless of how you have your child or if you choose to breastfeed or not, your body is no longer yours. You know, I remember standing in the mirror after I had Roman just thinking that my stomach would just go back to normal. Nursing a cesarean scar that I didn't think I was going to have, you know, because I had this perfect birth plan, but obviously he was...
Me too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we can talk about that. Roman was sideways, and that's so reflective of his personality. Like it's not even funny, but yeah. So basically, it was 12 months coming to an end. I remember getting on the phone to the two men that I reported into, and them being shocked that I wanted to come back. And I was like, well, it's the end of my, my 12 months. And they're like, oh, well, we don't really have a role. And I said, oh, that hasn't been communicated, and it's also not legal. But they were like, oh, and it was all a bit like, beating around the bush. And basically, not so many words, in very legal terms, they didn't want me back. I was going to be a mum. I wasn't going to do the late dinners and, all of that. I wanted to be with, and I had to be because I was still breastfeeding, I wanted to be with my child. And it's funny because I'd had that conversation with them, and it's like literally the next day I did a pregnancy test because I wasn't feeling well, and I thought there's no way I can be pregnant. They're so close. And it was just on Roman's first birthday morning. So I was having like 20 people to the house. I was catering, and I projectile vomited at like 5 a.m. in the morning. I'm like, that's not normal. And I was like, I'll just take a pregnancy test. And I was 6 weeks pregnant with Ruma.
What a shock.
So if anyone thinks that you can't get pregnant when you're breastfeeding and you don't have your period back, you can. So they ended up being just nearly 19 months apart. But obviously I didn't know that. And regardless, I couldn't have gone back to work. I was so sick. I was vomiting like up to 5 times a day with Ruma. I got the worst perennial dermatitis. I think that's the name of it. I'm probably saying that wrong, but I literally had a goatee that was so itchy and scaly.
So
honestly,
sexy,
I was so unattractive. Looking back now, I'm just like, gosh, you're a warrior, Jimmy. You're a warrior that you woke up next to me.
And somehow they find us so attractive.
Because they're carrying their young. It's very primal. But yeah, like everything that like Ruma literally, like, again, very reflective of Ruma. She made like my life. In my sleep, she dislocated my rib. So I woke up at like 4 a.m. and I had this intense shoulder pain, which I didn't actually realize can mean there's something wrong with your kidneys or something. Yeah, it's referring pain. So I got rushed to hospital, the whole hoo-ha. Everything was fine. They're like, no, actually your rib is like completely out. I was like, fantastic. So
basically it was like a physical...
Yeah, like my body was just...
It wasn't a possibility.
No,
But you were also forced out. Let's just call it a spade.
Yes, exactly. I mean, there was no way they wanted me back. It was a small business. I'd gone from big businesses. I was now in a smaller business, still in media, very heavy on the, like, even heavier on the entertaining, like go out, see people, have lunches, wear little dresses, do that, which is really scary that was still the case even, 12 years ago, 10 years ago.
What was the psychological response to that? Because I'm still very much in the thick of the psychological transformation.
Yes.
And emotional, chemical transformation. How did it feel? I can only imagine what it would be like to wake up and find out I was pregnant in the midst of all this, because you feel like you're just coming out of it. And then you're suddenly like, wow, I'm at the bottom of the hill again.
Yeah.
Your career's no longer there. You have a young child who's dependent on you. So you're still breastfeeding and you're also pregnant.
Mm-hmm. That was interesting.
How did you feel psychologically suddenly being, I guess, not to speak for you, but kind of lost?
Yeah, I was. And it was like I didn't exist. I was just like a body, like, and I obviously really suffered with Roman, post-birth, healing from a cesarean, and I'd never had any major surgery. And so that in itself, being an E-cup breast size.
Wow.
So literally I couldn't even, I'd go out for lunch with my friends and they would have these perky, cute little breastfeeding boobs, and I would literally be like a dump truck. And also I had so much milk that it used to come out Roman's nose. And so I had to breastfeed him laying down.
You're really a contraceptive today, Rachelle. Can you just pull back? For anyone out there, it's worth it. I promise.
Oozing sexiness. So I had to breastfeed him laying down and have a towel underneath us.
Wow.
Because there was that much milk. I was literally,
just
and then
a stunning
vision. A stunner. But and if you actually see photos of Roman, and we should include these because it's a testament to this liquid gold, he was the fattest child I've ever seen. He was so gorgeous. Like I had to pull apart his rolls and clean inside them because there was crumbs and like old milk, so it smelled like toad
I'm
jam.
still doing that with Xanthi around her neck. It's adorable.
It's adorable. But yeah, so I felt like I was just I wasn't living, I was just existing, and in saying that I had no health. So I was eating McDonald's, because I was so sick with rheuma, and so my doctor was literally like, you have to eat anything that you can literally get inside you, you know. So I was like, okay, cool, I'll just have like Big Macs, and I think it was like Big Macs, cornflakes, Twix bars, like everything that I do. Like it was like the worst diet. Like it was beyond. I remember like driving through McDonald's drive-through and like Roman's screaming in the bag, and I'm like, I'll have a Big Mac meal, please. And just like dropping Roman home and then just sitting in the car eating my Big Mac on top of my bum and just being like, this is rock bottom. This is rock bottom. And
it sounds like a tasty rock bottom. To be fair.
Actually delicious. Gosh, I could have one now.
I'm still there, really.
Oh, I know, damn you. But yeah, and then obviously I had rheuma. I had no career, no body of my own, no relationship with my husband because it was survival. Friends who either were above me with kids, so as in older kids, so couldn't kind of relate and didn't have the time, or friends who didn't have kids and couldn't relate and didn't have the time. And then the only family we have is my mum, and she was literally so sick for the first 2 years of my kid's life because she got everything that they got, but she's an older, you know, woman, so she got it 10 times worse. So, you know, she was getting MRIs because she kept getting sinus infections, and she thought she had a brain tumor. So she's like, can't help today, got an MRI. I'm like, very selfish, mum. Like, so I remember like sitting on the lounge, breastfeeding Ruma, and Roman at my feet, like with his like little like pretend builder's kit, like hammering my foot with like his hammer, and then like gnawing on my kneecaps, and I'm trying to feed this screaming newborn. Jimmy was doing like incredibly long days in North Sydney, so the opposite side of where we were. Mum wasn't there, and I was by myself with these two kids, and I just remember just thinking like, how did I get here? Like, you know, how did it all happened so quickly, but it didn't. And I couldn't have even gone back to work if I wanted to. I didn't have any help, but then daycare would have been my whole salary for both of them. So it was like, we'd bought this big house, like we were in the suburbs, like there was nothing around us. I had no friends to come over, and I was fucking miserable. Mm-hmm. I was miserable, and I felt like the lowest. And it was before your kids can even hug you and say you're doing a good job, mum, or I love you. They were just literally blobs and an abusive toddler. So no one even saying you're doing, you know, Jimmy would say, obviously you're doing a great job. But I'm like, get away from me. You did this. So it was probably the lowest point in my life, really, besides when my dad died. But, you know, at least then you can go, I'm sad because my dad died. Whereas you can't say I'm sad because you've got two healthy kids, when some people dream of that their whole lives, and you can't tell people you're sad and you resent your life because you've got everything most people wish for. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was a really, really hard time.
Let's touch on your dad's passing, because that has shaped you and where you are today so much. Yeah. When did he die in relation to?
So he died when I was 23. So he was 53. Okay. And he wasn't sick. They had gone up they had a boat moored up at Newport, which is you know, the equivalent of like going to the Cotswolds, mm-hmm. you know, or something like that. And they'd gone up because there'd been a big storm, so they'd gone up to check on the boat. He got up in the morning, he was fine, he had a piece of banana bread, he had a coffee, and he dropped dead. So I think, I can't say that's harder than someone being sick, but I think in regards to someone being sick, you're prepping. Mm-hmm. Not to say that's any easier, but this was like, you know,
unbelievable.
We were supposed to be at a party that night. You know, we had my cousin's 21st that night. You know, you know, his clothes were out for the next day. Like, you know, everything was like, not that, you know, but nothing prepares you. And I remember just getting the phone call and just saying, you know, he's had a minor heart attack. So it was a 2-hour drive. So they didn't want to tell us that he had died. But then, of course, I was driving, and my GP, who looks after my dad, called my phone, not realising, because he couldn't get a hold of my mum or my brother, and said, we just need a contact number for the death certificate. And I was like, the what? And I'm on the highway. And I'm just like, oh, the what? And he's like, the death certificate. And I just remember pulling across a 3-lane highway, stopping my car on a hill, and jumping out of the car and just laying in the middle of the road, just being like, what? Like, no, he's not dead. I was numb. Like, I was just like, I had another hour to drive to get there. And I got there and, it had happened. It was a giant heart attack. Nothing prepares you. But and so shortly thereafter, the funeral and whatnot, my brother left to go away, and it was just my mum and I. And, in a lot of ways, I became the mum at 23, because, I'd had to pick her up off the bathroom floor. I had to make sure she got up in the morning. I had to feed her. I had to, so I feel like I kind of became a parent in a way then, which very much shaped me for when I had my kids. Obviously didn't have to change her nappy, but like it was very much like, I was an adult at 23, which is funny because then I met Jimmy, a year after he had passed. And had I not have lost dad and been through that, Jimmy would have never been someone I would have settled down with, because he was too lovely and too nice and too clean cut and too generous and all of the things a 23-year-old is like, no, I want the arsehole, So, so it definitely shaped me from that way. Yeah.
An incredibly formative moment. And it has also shaped your wellness journey.
It has.
Talk to us about that.
Yes. So,
because also many years later, you were obviously sitting there eating the Big Mac. Yes. So did the wellness journey start soon after your dad passed, or was it much later?
No. I think no, much later. Sorry. Rumor was about...
It was after you had the kids, wasn't it?
Yeah. So I had gained... I was always very conscious of my body. I had a very... not nasty, but I had a very... what word would I use to describe him? Shallow boyfriend before Jimmy, who had told me that I was too fat or too big. And so I unhealthily lost a lot of weight very quickly, and to which then he told me that I wasn't toned enough. So I was like, oh God. So I had... and then it goes back to when you're young, and girls are treated so badly with their bodies, like especially in Australia, as you would know, because it's a very beach culture. I remember even being like 12 and like dancing on the side of the pool with like a bunch of guys that were my friends across the road, and I was singing like, Barbie Girl, because Aqua had just come out, and one of the boys is like, you couldn't be a Barbie girl, you're too fat, so it's like that is shaped in you from such a young age, And, but I'd never kind of been on that well. I don't think it really existed when we were younger, like, the green juices and, all these different diets you can be on. And then I think I completely lost control because I was obviously pregnant and I'd put on so much weight. I was the biggest I'd ever been. And I was it wasn't even that, I was so unfit. And obviously... Dad had dropped dead at 53. My mum had had breast cancer and melanoma, all within like a space of 5 years. This had happened. And I realized that I had crippling health anxiety. Like if, normally someone gets a cold, like I've got a sniffle, I'm like, I've got a flu and I'm going to die,
But so quite understandable.
Understandable.
Yeah.
But you beat yourself down about things, you're like, who am I? Like I have such a beautiful life. Like who am I to be, sad about anything, or...
But I think when you get a shock like that, like when Xanthi was sick or after the birth of Xanthi being sick, I became like quite health anxious conscious. Around health. Yeah. Which is totally normal, I think, given the circumstances.
I think as well, there's only a few years where when you're young where you think you're invincible and you think your parents are invincible, and their mortality never crosses your brain. That's my dad. Mm-hmm. He is strong. He is our hero. He can't die. And then... and I was even still kind of like that at 23. And then for him, I think everyone says to you, oh, you don't just drop dead, and then, like it literally happened. And I was like, oh shit, like it does happen. And that could just happen to anyone at any given time. Even saying that, my dad was not a healthy man. He was a pack-a-day smoker. He was a big drinker, so he was, and probably even more so, he was a massive stress head. Mm-hmm. So there were very much, and also his body, like I remember, he would lay down on the ground and stretch out because his indigestion was so bad, like massive sign, and he never went to the doctor. So I have kind of tried to turn my health anxiety into living the best I possibly can and respecting this body the best I can, and being acutely aware of my body and my kids' bodies and anything that changes. And I don't care about being that person at the doctor. I don't care. I would rather pay that money. That's what... I'm their client. Like they're happy for me to go and see them. I'm paying them. But yeah, so Rumor was between 12 and 18 months. And I just remember getting so puffed walking up the stairs. And I'm like, this is not me. Like I've always been so healthy. I was sports captain. Like I was like, I needed to be healthy for my kids. Like I always remember thinking, all my dad ever wanted was to walk me down the aisle, and he didn't do that, you know. So I want to be old and grey for my kids. And so literally I woke up the next day and I was like, okay, I'm going to be healthy. And I literally I went vegan. So I went from like a Big Mac to the next day I'm vegan. I cut out everything and it was basically like I started from scratch. I was reborn. So I went out and I bought all these like greens and, you know, all of these natural, like it's basically just the rainbow, right? No meats, nothing like that. I bought some tofu and whatever. I unfollowed a lot of like really toxic accounts that I'd followed, like, you know, anyone that was super skinny and like kind of glorified it, you know, or.
This is your reminder to do that.
Yes.
But unfollow anyone who doesn't make you feel good.
Exactly. And it wasn't just because they were skinny, but it was people that really didn't treat their bodies well. And then, you know, I unfollowed any kind of fashion accounts and all of that kind of stuff that made me feel bad when I looked at them, you know. And I followed all of these women who had really like had kids and had changed their lives in some way, and I felt empowered me. And so I followed all their recipes. I found this girl in America, her name's Bonbury. She was amazing. I followed all her recipes. And I think the irony was that it was also simple, like the salad. It's, you know, and in saying that again, a very privileged, because a lot of it is very expensive. Mm-hmm. So it is a privilege to be able to eat like that. So it's like a lot of fresh produce. And I did notice that like my bill, like to eat badly is so cheap. Mm-hmm. To eat well is 3 times the price.
Let's use this moment
yes.
to marry a few of these, like to link this together. So your dad passes away very surprisingly at the age of 23.
Yeah.
Fast forward, you've had the 2 kids.
Yes.
You're sitting there having the McDonald's.
Yeah.
You're staring down the barrel of motherhood, but you've never been less happy.
Yes.
Then we skip on to privilege.
Yes.
You've always been very outspoken about how it is a privilege to be a stay-at-home mum.
Yes.
In a lot of ways for you.
Of course.
How did that unhappy new mum of 2 make the decision not to return to work?
Yeah.
And take on this incredible role that you have.
Yeah.
And marry all of those thoughts together. Like what was that moment and that shift? And when was that decision made? Or was it kind of a progressive decision that was made for you?
I mean, I'll use the word accidental because it really was. And, you know, it wasn't that in very many ways I wasn't in charge of my life at all. I was very lucky that I had a very supportive husband and family that allowed me to stay home. Mm-hmm. But again, as I will draw back on, it was actually cost efficient. It was going to cost me my whole salary basically to send them full time to daycare, opposed to me actually just being at home. But for me, it was like we always knew I wanted to have a year off because that's how long I breastfed Roman. I wanted to breastfeed Rima for a year as well. So I knew then that I would be having that other year off. So that's what, you know, 2 and a bit years already that you're a mum. And then it was, you know, I was looking at jobs, but it was by that time I'd been out of work, and all of these jobs that I was looking at, I was like I was terrified. I'd been out of work. I wasn't like I was before. I was this entirely new person with completely different perspective on life and what mattered. And the thought of going back to a 9-to-5 and trying to then also be a mum, and you know, and I have many friends who do it and do it with grace and energy and enthusiasm, and they love the you know, shuffle of it all, you know. But for me, there wasn't something that I could go back into. I had left my job. It would have been starting from scratch. So Jimmy said, well, you know, do you want to have another year at home? Because that's when then Roman will start daycare and then we can start thinking about it. And then the whole move to the UK came up, and, you know, we were like, well, that's going to take a year to get ourselves sorted. And then my Instagram started, and then I started earning some money from Instagram, and I started earning some money doing some ad hoc writing and words for people. And that was enough just to kind of pay for some groceries and, you know, do that kind of stuff. So I thought, okay, well, I can earn a little bit of money while we're figuring out what we're going to do with our lives. And then all of a sudden it's like you're prepping to move to another country, and then all of a sudden you've been out of work for 5 years, and, you know, and then COVID hits. And sorry, I should have mentioned that. So obviously COVID hit in between then, and obviously no one was hiring. And
I think it's really important to touch here on, I feel it needs to be tread very carefully because there's a lot of judgment around mothers, whichever route they take.
Of course.
I feel I went back to work far too quickly and I'm sure there was a lot of judgment around that. You haven't returned to work in a formal sense.
Yes. Yeah.
And I'm sure there'll be judgment around that.
Of course.
I often feel like I'm privileged to be able to go to work.
Exactly.
Because I love that I get to do both.
Yep.
And then some days I feel like I'm making the worst decision in the world.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to touch on, and we've talked about this so much, not recording.
Yeah.
The fact that the truth of the matter is that there's no perfect answer
no
to
winning.
motherhood.
There's no
whether
winning.
you're a stay-at-home mum or whether you're a full-time working mum.
No.
I don't think, we've talked about this offline, but I think it's important for people to hear this from us today, is I don't think you ever feel like you're getting it 100% right.
No.
And I listened to this extraordinary podcast the other day with Emma Grede, who's the woman behind a lot of the Kardashian brands, Skims and Good American and so on. And she was super honest about what she's had to do in order to be where she is and how, no, she can't be at the school gates picking up and dropping off, and no, she does have to miss some school plays. And she gets asked every day how she feels about that and if she feels guilty, but her husband never gets asked. And I think it's really important to touch on, like, the reason that spoke to me so much is because there is a lot of pressure on women.
Of course.
And there is a lot of judgment.
Yep.
And I think we've both experienced it from totally different sides of the coin.
Definitely.
Which is really also interesting because I struggled to produce enough milk.
Of course.
And my milk disappeared quite quickly, whereas you had the opposite problem where you were kind of exploding milk, right?
I would have shed.
Yeah. And I felt judgment around not breastfeeding for long enough.
Yeah.
And, you know, I know other girls who've had judgment for breastfeeding for too long.
Too long.
So that was something that I felt really important to touch on in the middle of this episode, because wherever you are and whatever you're doing, if you feel any pressure, if you feel any judgment, know that we feel the same.
Well, exactly. And I think we live in a digital world, right, where everything is heightened, right? So they see you just going to work and what you're doing at work, right? Because you choose not to share a lot of your kids, which I think is amazing, and which is what I also chose to change mine from motherhood to fashion, because I didn't want to share my children anymore. So they see, again, and I mean, this is discussed so often about the highlights reel, but we need reminding of this constantly, because it is. Like, you don't see, and in saying that, where I am now, I am the happiest I've ever been in my whole entire life. And I say that sincerely. I have the most beautiful group of friends. My children are brilliant and I am so proud of them. And I know, and I'm not a crier, but I will cry because my kids, I couldn't be more proud of them. We took them from a country, we changed them to a whole new country. They had to learn a whole new way of school life. Like, they were in a whole different year here. They had to make all new friends. And if one thing in my life that I haven't messed up is them. And that is because I stayed home with them. And that's not saying that a mum that goes to work, the way that she has shaped them is also brilliant. But I needed to do what I needed to do to shape my kids the way that I have. And I wouldn't change it for a second. They are brilliant. And I got what I needed to heal from my dad, and all the things that I hadn't healed from, I got from them, you know, and that time with them, and my relationship with my mum as well, because she was born again when her zest for life was rebirthed. You know, she had a meaning now, and from them, she has now created a whole new life for herself, and I have created a whole new life for me, and Jim has created a whole new life for him, and we've done it together. Like, the best time, like, I used to spend so much of my energy trying to get away from my children. Who can mind them? Who can take them? And now it's like, what can we do? How can we do it together? And
this is what I wanted people to hear, because I think in this day and age, I have felt much more pressure to be a working mum and for kids not to kind of impact who I am as an independent woman and so on and so forth. But I was also raised with a stay-at-home mum, and it shaped me and my siblings into who we are today. And it is the most important job in the world, which is why it was so important for me on this podcast to have a mum who has shaped these extraordinary little beings and who is so happy as a mum. Because I think for anyone out there who's thinking, should I, will I? Please know that there are like beautiful examples of people who are doing it and loving it. And I know that people know that, but emphasize it again is really beautiful to hear.
But also, I came from a family where my mum worked and my dad worked, and we didn't see much of them because, they didn't have that option. And I was raised a lot of the time by my grandparents, who I love and adore, but I am still, I think I'm an amazing person for that, because then I had the luxury of making that choice of going, do I want to do that or do I want to do, and as we've discussed, some of it was out of my hands in regards to I couldn't go back to my job and I really didn't know where to go from there. And so inverted commas, it was the easier option to stay home. But I mean, it was not the easier option. Like you really have to fight to keep yourself as a stay-at-home mum. Like you have to, like, what interests you? What's your hobbies? What's your, who are you without your children? Because, you go to a dinner party, what do you do? Oh, I'm a mum. Oh, okay. It's like, oh, but I also I write and I love writing, and I do a lot of it just for myself, but sometimes I do writing for people, or I do, whatever I do. But I also enjoy, and I list a few other things. I've just tried to take up tennis or cooking or whatever it might be, or I'm trying this dish that I've never tried before, but that's not interesting to people. They want to hear.
Which is ironic because you're one of the most interesting and interested people I know. You make such an effort. Like the way you've embraced London and the way you get out there, and you've seen more of London in the past few months than I have in 10 years.
I think one of my friends the other day,
it's not like you're just doing the school run and at home and you're tracking. It's like you get out there and you live.
Do you know my rule for myself when making this move? Because I've never done anything scary in my life. I never did the Kentucky. I didn't do the backpacking. Like I literally I hung out with my mum. And that was because I was just terrified of life for so long. And then you lose someone and you realize that life is, it's there and then it's gone, and, I always say to my girlfriends, I'm like, all my dad ever wanted in his life was a Harley Davidson, and he couldn't afford it for so long. I'm getting a Harley Davidson and you're jumping on the back. We're going to zoom around London. No, and he never got it. And for so long he couldn't do it because he couldn't afford it, or he didn't have the time. He had little kids, and then he finally got to his point in life where he could, and he died. And so for me, it's like when Jimmy said to me, "Should we move to London?" Yes, let's go and live. It could be fucking terrible, but who cares? We can come home. Let's go and do this. Like, it's experience this. And I made a little bit of a silent rule to myself that it was like, every single day I am going to live. I'm going to do something. And, whether it be, I do my workout early, I drop the kids to school, and then I get on the train. And some days I would just get on the train and go to some random place and get out and walk and find where it took me, Sometimes that really was not a good idea because you're ending up in places where it's not that safe. It's not a Sydney bubble. But yeah, and and every single day I do something. Do you know what it is as well? One thing that I have really fallen back in love with since moving here is people, is humans, because you get really quite I had some really toxic friends who are really knock you down and knock you down and knock you down, and then you lose that faith in humanity, and then I've gotten here and you and so many women that I've met that are so beautiful with their time and their patience and their interests, and
that's
in me,
one of the reasons I've always stayed in London is the people I've met here have just been so extraordinary.
They are, they don't care what you do or who you are. They want to know what drives you, what inspires you, how you inspire them, your energy. I always remember someone saying to me, it's like, and I think you said to me the other day, it's like, when I leave, I have such good energy when I leave you. And if that's what I can leave on this earth, I would be, that would make me the happiest person ever if I left my energy,
So let's talk about, it's taken us a while to get there because you and we could be
chat. I know, sorry.
Let's talk about your CEO superpower.
Yes.
Which is, drum roll,
Surrender.
Surrender. So fitting for a mother.
It is, and it's such a powerful word because I feel like in a lot of ways from a masculine point of view, surrender is looked at as a weakness. I'm surrendering, I give up, it's like battle terms. But from a mother, surrender isn't about a weakness. It's about reinventing yourself day to day. I am a different person each day. Like I surrender to things that this morning.
Or in the first hour of the day.
Literally this morning I surrendered to straightening Ruma's hair again because she hates her curls. And so, no, but it's surrendering like to what you expect of your day, what you expect of yourself, what you expect from other people, what you expect you're having for dinner. It can be anything. And going, well, that's fine. I'm not going to get angry that I didn't do this or upset that I didn't do this because I'm alive and I'm healthy and I'm happy and anything is possible each day. And yes, I surrendered to that today, but tomorrow I'm going to fucking own it,
Motherhood has taught me to surrender to the present moment. So something I find so interesting is I always used to be rushing.
Yeah.
And I always used to write, I'm rushing to work, I'm rushing home. Rushing was just like a part of my vocabulary.
Yeah.
And what I've noticed now is that it doesn't matter how much I want to get on that call or send that email. If there's something that Xanthi or Arlo need from me in that moment, I can't prioritize that thing.
No.
I have to, I remember I was taking Arlo to work one day, to school one day, sorry. I was obviously
on your way
taking
to work.
him to school on the way to work.
Yeah.
And I was rushing out the door and he wanted to stop and talk to me. He was like, Hermie, and he wanted to talk to me about, I think it was a spider or something on the stairs, and he wanted to talk to me about the spider. And I was like, come on. We've got to go. And he was like, but Hermie, if you don't look at it now, it won't be here when we get back. And it was so true, and I had to stop and put down the coffee that was kind of spilling and, whatever, and sit with him on the step and just have that moment. Yeah. And obviously the moment didn't even last long. It was like an extra minute.
Exactly.
But it just slows me right down and into that moment.
Yeah. And that's your surrender.
Yeah.
And I think and you're right, because the number of times a day where Roman says to me, Mum, stop and look at this is so little now. And it was, Mum, look at this rock. Mum, look at this. And I was always like, on to the next thing, and we're taught that's ingrained in us, like keep moving, keep going. And just sometimes, like I walked yesterday through Kew Gardens, which is so good for the soul, and I'm always in a rush to get to my 10,000 my 10 kilometers, because I have in my head I have to do these steps per day,
I probably do like 800 a day on average. Literally.
Whatever
I walk
you
to
do
get coffee and then I walk back. And then I walk to get a stick.
You Notting Hill girls. Whatever is important
or
is
a sandwich,
important.
let's be honest.
Oh God. And it's so funny because there's always this fox that I see in Kew Gardens, right? And usually I'd be terrified of foxes. Like, they're not new. We have them in, down the back of my mum's house and, whatever. And but Roman had said to me the other day, he's like, Mum, have you seen the foxes down the back of our house, like in the allotments? And I was like, yeah, I see them. Yeah. And he's like, Mum, I love foxes. Like, they're so beautiful. Rah, rah. And I thought, oh, yeah, they are. And I saw this fox and I thought, oh, no, I've got to keep going because then I've got to get home and I've got to do this and I've got to do that and I've got to get this done and I've got to do that. I don't have time to look at this fox, And this is such a silly story, but it shows how much we're rushing through this life for nothing. And so I stopped, and this fox got within half a metre of me, and it's obviously a local Kew Gardens fox and it probably gets fed by all the tourists, but it was beautiful and I got such close footage. And Roman got home and I said, Roman, look what I got. And I showed him this footage, and honestly, he was like, I haven't seen him that excited about anything since he got his Saint Germain kit that he's been waiting for. He was like, oh, Mum, you got so close to this fox. And for like 10 minutes, I was a hero. Like I was like the bravest, and like I'm thinking this fox is like not like scary, but anyway. And I thought to myself, like, that cost me nothing. That took me 45 seconds, and I try and do that in my life because I notice that whenever I rush through my day, I wake up the next morning with this feeling of heaviness, and it's like, I don't remember yesterday. I don't remember the face that I spoke to. I don't remember the face of the person that I took the tea off. I don't remember Roman or Ruma's face when I dropped them off. I don't remember the kiss on my cheek. I don't remember any of that, and that is fleeting, and that will go. And I want to remember those moments forever. And I've learnt to slow down, you know, not to sit and drink the tea and not spill it over myself, and to surrender to the mess at home, because you know what? I clean it up, there'll be a mess tomorrow. To surrender to plans that get cancelled or don't go to my plan, you know, because regardless of what I'm doing or how I'm steering my life, there's always going to be a spanner thrown in the works, like my dad dying, or, you know, Roman's t-shirt having a stain on it and we're going to be 10 minutes late, you know. But I'm still alive and I'm experiencing that moment now, and I want to cherish that.
So that's so fitting, because CEO stands for cherish every opportunity, which I feel like you've perfectly represented.
Summed up. Yep.
What would be your top tips for the listener out there? They may not be a mother, or they may be, but wherever they are in their life, how can they practice surrender?
Well, I think it's like what we've just kind of said. It's like, you know, you see a bug, stop and look at the bug. Like 1 minute, 30 seconds is going to, you know, not going to change your life. You know, I always think of that movie Sliding Doors, where you make the train or you don't make the train. Like, your life has a funny way of putting you where you need to be, in some situations, bad situations, but because you need to be in that situation to grow or to move or to change, or in really good situations, you know, whereas, you know, if I hadn't have surrendered to the thought of moving here, I never would have been living this life where I'm the happiest I've ever been. And I had to just surrender to so many things that I had ingrained in myself for 36 years of what I should be and who I should be.
It's surrendering to control, I think.
It's surrendering to control and to your own expectations for yourself.
Which is something I grapple with because I am
a perfectionist.
Well, I'm a bit of a control freak.
Yeah.
And it's something that I've been trying to navigate since becoming a mum, because as we touched on, you know, like the birth is the first for me. Yeah. For me, it was the first like spiraling moment of having this beautiful plan that I'd worked so hard for and I'd envisaged and I'd, of course, you know, I'd done all the hypnobirthing, I'd done all the exercise. I was like ready.
I remember those text messages. Yeah. I'm just like, I'm hypnobirthing.
I was ready to birth for like 3 weeks if I had to. I had the mental strength.
Yep. I remember. And I remember just reading the message going, I support you, babe. I support you.
For those listening on at home, it ended in an emergency C-section, and it was a horrible situation. Yeah. But I remember that was the first moment I've truly, truly deeply surrendered physically and emotionally to an experience where I literally just gave my body and my life over, and I just said, this will be what it is for both of us, and I'm totally at ease with whatever the outcome is. It was a wild experience, and what a beautiful, in a way, entry and transition into motherhood, because that's what motherhood is.
And I think
but I wish I'd known that younger.
Yes.
To surrender to control, because you can't be in control of your life and things are going to happen.
For our whole lives, we are taught to be tough, right? You fall over and you graze your knee. Come on, you're right. Keep going. You have a heartbreak. Come on, there's more fish in the sea. Keep going. You lose a loved one. Well, you got to come back to work. You've got to you've got to get up in the morning, you know. And in so many instances, yes, you need to be tough for this life, because you will fall over and over again. And I think we have evolved ourselves to be so tough and not let, you know, anything bring us down or let anyone in, that we are almost evolving ourselves out of having meaningful relationships or downtime or letting your children see yourself vulnerable. And my biggest thing was I didn't cry for my dad. I didn't cry for a very long time, and I was very tough and I was very cold to anyone who did cry, you know. And Jimmy, who is very emotional and open to a cry.
Sounds like ants.
Yeah. Well, we married those men. We married good men. But he softened me, and he taught me that, yes, being soft can make you vulnerable, but can also let very good people and good situations into your life. And it has.
Strength through vulnerability.
When I came to London, I let my guard down, and all those things where it's like, don't make new friends, don't go to, don't tell people about your private life, don't tell people about your weaknesses. I did all of that, and I am the first person to say, I'm not good at this, or I can't do that, or can I have your help, or or have a cry with me, or whatever it may be. And I have met better people by doing that than I have in my whole entire life of being tough and being having that wall up to stop the world from coming in. And now I'm letting it flood in, and it's beautiful because I've never felt more alive.
You're such a beautiful example of cherishing every opportunity and to surrendering to what life has in store for you.
Yeah.
And look how beautifully it's all come
out.
Together, and how beautiful your life is. And it's such an honour for me to have you here in London, and such a dear friend.
Thank you, my dear.
And to have had you on the podcast today. So what is next for you, just in closing? What's next for Rachelle?
Next for Rachelle, well, I'm doing a little bit of work, just words here and there, a little bit of styling. And
I haven't even touched on what a fashionist you are.
No. I mean, that's
I think there's a lot coming, but it will be exciting for everyone to watch it unfold on social media.
It is. And first and foremost, friend, mum, and just living and saying yes. I say that's my motto, and that is my 2024, and it was my 2023. And if I can leave you with anything, is say yes to everything. If it's shit, you can leave. If it isn't, what an experience.
Yeah. So where can the listener find you?
They can find me on Instagram. Rachelle.Rowlings. I'm on TikTok, but I don't know how to use it, and it really confuses me. And my 5 just turned 6-year-old shows me how to use it.
But you're most importantly on Substack.
Oh, I am. I haven't
you are an
shared
incredible
on there.
writer.
Yeah, thank you, my darling. I don't think I am, but I do love writing, and I will be. I have about 100 unshared ones because I wanted to have a little break while there was some chaos going on in the world and not write about, non-important things. But I have them backlogged, and I'm ready to kind of come back. So they will be in your inbox very shortly.
Amazing.
But thank you to you, because you are an inspiration, my love, and not just as a friend. I was inspired by you even before we were this close, and to be proud of yourself as well.
Oh, this is a love-in.
And also, I know I'm not usually like this. I usually pay her out. But
I hate
also inspiring to say you are the biggest advocate for women. And I think that's a very important thing for the listener to take as well, is that support women, support your friend, share her name, say her name in a room full of people, but do whatever you need to do to support your female friends, whether they are a stay-at-home mum. Remind the stay-at-home mums that they're worthy and that they are people, and remind the mums who have to work that they're incredible in both ways as well, because women need to hear that even if they are very tough.
That's such a nice closing message. I hope every woman, mother out there feels that support. Yeah. And in giving it out, I know I get it back. So that's the first place to start if you're not feeling it, is to go and give it and give and give, and it will come firing
and you'll always
back your
get
way.
It back. Yeah.
It would mean the world to me if you would share today's episode with someone you feel would enjoy it. And don't forget to hit subscribe, like, and leave a comment.